If you enjoy our videos and podcasts and would like us to continue putting out regular quality content, head over to patreon.com/aircrewinterview, where you can donate monthly, and in return you will get rewards ranging from early interview viewings, bonus clips, credited as a producer, and much more. Thank you and enjoy.
So initially, I requested to fly Mirage 2000 as an exchange officer with a French Air Force. So I got Rafale Navy. I couldn't complain. I got very lucky because I was sent. I got assigned Rafale in 2014, and it was basically the year it really got swing roll, omni roll. Before that, the aircraft wasn't really finished, and it's still ongoing. Some new upgrades as we discussed. But what you have to understand is we initially created the platform, and then for more than 30 years, we just changed the aircraft, just like the Typhoon or any modern aircraft, basically. We upgraded it. And the air-to-surface mission really arrived around 2013, 2014, and that's one of the reasons I transitioned to Rafale, was to bring some IM-39 expertise into the Rafale squadrons that were more focused on air-to-air, because that's basically what they were doing before. So when I arrived, it was great to be able to learn air-to-air tactics, Fox 3, long range, all that stuff. I really loved it because it was kind of frustrating to be the GOAT in big missions. So with the Super E, your goal was, okay, for Super E, go at 100 feet, 480 knots, and just let the big boys do their stuff up there, and they'll kill the enemy, and just go there and focus on dropping the bomb, your missile at the good time on the right target, which is nice, but it's not as fun as taking G's and taking decisions and telling your wingman, do that, now do that, not to debrief, put your shades on and be like, hey, we nailed it, guys. Because I mean, the air-to-air against air-to-ground, and I was more in the mindset of air-to-air is awesome. I want to fight. I know I can do it. So look, give me my spot. And so when I transitioned to Rafale, I really went full head into transitioning air-to-air. I got one of the best instructors you can think of. It was an exchange officer from the Air Force, and he was coming from -5, Mirage 2000-5. So he only knew one stuff, which is air-to-air. So he had like 100% of his experience in this, which is very rare. In the Navy, we are omni-roll, so we're not as experts. So I really sucked up all his knowledge. So it was awesome. And then I, of course, got my training on air-to-surface and air-to-ground as well. But being able to climb at 50,000 feet, accelerate to Mach 1.6 to make what we call the Sputnik push, really changed my vision of aviation, and I was like, oh, I wished I would have flown Rafale earlier.
But yeah, let's talk about your first takeoff in the Rafale, and what kind of training would you do?
Sure. So to transition from Super E to Rafale, first is ground school. I went 3 weeks in Mont-de-Marsan Air Force Base for what we call the Vector Ground School, learning everything I need to know on the aircraft, not on the combat systems, but on the aircraft only, emergency systems. It was my first fly-by-wire aircraft. It does make quite a lot of difference. You have much more EPs, emergency procedures. 3 weeks of training, went back to Landivisio, and we usually have 2 different curriculums. One is you go with the Air Force in Saint-Dizier. You have 2-seaters, and you'll be doing some 2-seater flights. And I went the single-seat route, just like for Super E, which is a ground school. After that, 10 simulators of about 90 minutes each. And then first flight. So first flight starts the day before by starting up the aircraft, going on the runway, going full power at 100 knots, do an upward takeoff, and then taxi back just to get a feel of all the procedures and all that stuff. And then the next day, first flight, first solo directly. You line up at 2 aircraft, the leader takes off, he does a pattern, and as he's coming back, you go full power and you take off. And at that point, I had 1,300 hours, 1,100 hours on jets, and it really impressed me. I was supposed, I think, to leave the nose, can't remember exactly the numbers, but I was supposed to pull back on the stick at 135 knots-ish, I think I read 147 when I started flying. The aircraft was light. We take off full afterburner all the time. And I was just like hanging up to my life and my stick, like, what's going on? It's pushing so much. And very different feeling from the Super E. So I like to call the Rafale space shuttle. It's insane how much energy it has. But it's like any type of modern aircraft, depends on the weight of the aircraft. When you have 15 tons, it's not the same as when you fit it with all the bombs and you're flying at 22 tons. But the first training was at ground school, 10 sims, and then first flight directly.
Mm-hmm. And what was it like? Could you feel the power when the burners kicked in compared to the Super E?
Okay. It was my first experience ever with afterburner, so never saw that much of a fuel flow before. Wow, that's
keep your eye on
it. Actually, I think what impressed me the most with afterburner aircraft is the ability for all the systems in the aircraft, the engineering that took place to enable you to go from basically in air shows from 10 liters a minute to 800 liters a minute, just like that.
Yeah.
And you try as a pilot to be smooth with the controls and with the power, especially when you're coming from a super-étendard, because your orders might go directly into the systems. But with a Rafale, you have computers, all that stuff. Yet coming from an aircraft like that, you're always a bit, okay, I'll do it a bit slower or stuff like that. Yeah. But it's very impressive. And yes, you do really feel the afterburner. At some point, with that type of aircraft, when you're flying middle or high altitude, it's not as much as a push as when you're doing air shows. And when you do air show, it's insane how much it pushes above 400 knots. But if you want to really feel how important the thrust is, you reduce power. And by reducing power, you basically are like this in the harness and just decelerate.
Mm-hmm.
And decelerate. And you're like decelerating like this. Decelerate, and it could decelerate for almost like minutes. You're like, dude, I mean, it's insane. That's, I think, how you really feel the importance of the engine. And especially with delta wings, you're only as good as your engine. I mean, if your engine comes off, you're not going to be able to glide much. So basically, you have to go 40-degree nose down, try to get as much airspeed as you can to try to relight. But those delta wing aircraft, it's really, really important to have a good engine.
So what kind of roles you said, like, obviously it was a swing roll aircraft. So was it basically 50-50 air to ground, and air to air, or did you focus on one more than the other?
And being in the Navy, we have a very specific culture in terms of omni-role. You have a carrier. You have your entire force at sea for a month, and you only have about 20 aircraft-ish. And that's what's going to happen with the Queen Elizabeth and all that stuff. It's the exact same thing. So you have to be able, with only a fleet of 20 aircraft-ish, to accomplish any type of mission. And nowadays, with advanced aircraft, those missions, I mean, there are a lot. If you look at the 80s-ish, you would have one aircraft for reconnaissance, one aircraft for air-to-air refueling, one aircraft for interception, one aircraft for air-to-ground, blah, blah, blah. Now they all fusion, they're all mixed into one. And as a pilot, you have to be able to do all those missions. What the HR departments of the military didn't anticipate is that you used to have 5 specialists, experts in any given mission, that will be trained in a couple of years. And now all those 5 experts are one guy. So your training is going to be much longer. And with the technology at your hands, every single mission is going to become much more complex as well. So you basically train all the time, all type of missions, and you try to remain good in every single one. But it's not just air-to-air and air-to-ground. It's long-range air-to-air. It's short-range air-to-air. It's closer support. It's AI. It's shooting of missiles like the Storm Shadow. It's shooting of nuclear missiles for the French Navy, single seat. We are nuclear capable, which is a world qualification. It is anti-surface, IM-39. You don't attack boats at sea like you attack a base. It's not the same at all. Boats move. From the moment you take off to the moment you're going to strike, they might have done 200 miles. They might have changed formation, so it's very specific in different tactics. It's reconnaissance. We have a 1-ton pod, reconnaissance pod on the Rafale. Reconnaissance long range, short range, so qualifications again. And I'm sure I'm missing a couple ones. air-to-air refueling. You have your refueling pods, so you have to be able to give fuel to the others. So basically, you're just training all the time and just like training after qualification after qualification, and then you have to remain good in all of them. And on top of that, you have what we call swing roll missions. Swing roll missions mean, hey, we only have like 5 aircraft available. We're expecting some air-to-air defense of the enemy airspace. You're going to go with your missiles and with your bombs. And you're going to have to switch role between doing the sweep, moving the enemy around, and dropping your bombs, and then protecting maybe Mirage 2000D coming in to drop more bombs. Mm-hmm. So you basically start with your air-to-air hat, and then you switch to air-to-ground, and back to air-to-air, and so on. So it's quite a lot of stuff to do. It takes indeed much more time to train guys because it's just so intense, and the selection is a bit different as well, for 2 reasons. First one is you have to be willing to play the game. It's just so long. It can be very difficult. And the second one is we're single-seat aircraft, just like the F-35, and you have to be able to do all that stuff, and you have to be able to go air-to-air, decide you're able to go air-to-air, switch air-to-ground, laser bomb yourself while having a look on the air-to-air, and then switch back to air-to-air. And basically, after you drop and laser bombs, what that means is you're going to have to decide which side to go to have an impact on the air-to-air game. And the good omni-roll guy, once he's done with his bomb and he had the footage for the BDA, is just transitioning immediately to air-to-air, and he's already committing and becoming a threat to the future enemy, forcing a threat to react. The guy turning cold all the time, it's great, but you're not as effective. So it's really a job. So if you air-to-air your stuff, you still have to react on the good side. So it is great as fighter pilots because it enables you to really show what you're worth. Mm-hmm. And in a squadron, you really are able to place yourself. I mean, competition can be higher from a point of view. It's very challenging. There is always room for improvement. That's for sure.
I can imagine, yeah. So, what would you say the Rafale does really well? Do you think it excels more on the air-to-air side of things rather than the air-to-ground? What would you say its best characteristics were?
And honestly, I'm impressed by the fact that it is best suited for all the missions. They took time to develop every single mission, but the philosophy behind the cockpit makes it extremely pilot-friendly. Having all the sensors fusioning into one area, into one screen, makes a whole really change your life. Like in one screen, you see radar, infrared sensors, Link 16, electronic warfare sensors, the map, 2D view and 3D view, everything in one single screen. And it's really awesome because it really helps you build situation awareness. And it makes air-to-air easier. It makes air-to-ground easier as well because you can add like all your sensors. We have OSF. The OSF is like a super camera. You can use it for air-to-air or air-to-ground. You have your laser targeting pod, all that stuff. So I wouldn't say it's best suited for a mission. I think it's down to the pilot training at some point. Because as we discussed, there are so many missions. The pilot is might be weird, but having aircraft that are able to do so many missions, I think the pilot plays even more important role because he's been tasked and he's been ordered and he's been trained in much more missions. But as a human being, there are more missions where you're better than others. Yeah. And I think if you compare 2 or 3 Rafale, you might have huge difference in mission success depending on the abilities and the expertise of the guy you put in the jet. If you take a guy that flew Super Étendard for 15 years, and then he transitioned for the last 2 years of his career on a Rafale, you've seen that before, don't ask him to lead a 6 aircraft sweep mission. I mean, he can, officially he can, but the other guys are going to be like, okay, in air-to-air. You see what I mean? Yeah. So I think it was extremely true. It's going to be less and less relevant nowadays because we have less transitioning of fleet. I think it was the same in the UK as well. You could have a brand new aircraft, super shiny aircraft, but now the guy stayed an extra couple years, but he doesn't have the background in that type of mission. And yet, due to his level and rank, all that stuff, he's given the lead. And then you have not a catastrophic outcome, but it's not going to be as good as what the aircraft could do. So I think it's going to be true for another 4 to 5 years. I think the pilot is more and more important in the result of the mission due to his background, because it's just so vast. So I think which is cool for the pilot.
Of course, yeah. And we're obviously going to have to talk about DACT here, because you've done a recent video with the F-22. So I want to know how the Rafale fares against, Typhoon, F-16, F-15, the types at the time of this time. So tell us about this.
Sure. I think you've seen it in the Rafale against F-22 videos. That is footage from 2009, where I honestly think the F-22, and I put my Canadian, I'm French Canadian. I fly for a Canadian major now, but I put my Canadian cap on when I have to do those French against non-French material stuff. But I honestly think close air, the F-22 should, Rafale against F-22, the F-22 is supposed to win, and that's how it should be. Capped like they did, with the errors that the F-22 driver did, he won, which is normal. And he didn't he lost. And he didn't officially lost because, as we said, the pilot did not take his shot when he should have. But what I mean is, you might have the best aircraft in the world. If you reverse your turn in dogfight when you shouldn't reverse, and if you play War Thunder or DCS, do not reverse your turns. Oh, that's something I try to emphasize all the time. I used to do it when I was playing video games initially, and I love video games. But if you're chasing another aircraft and the guy is reversing like in movies, it's just to give you nice video footage. That's it. Yeah. In combat, by doing that, you're just putting yourself in the firing position of the other aircraft. So what you want to do is you pick a side and you go as hard as you can on one side, and then he's going to be in trouble. If you pick a side and then, oh no, I just changed my mind, like Cougar in Top Gun, and oh no, I'm reversing, then the MiG-28 is just like chilling behind you and triggering.
Just like...
and it's so bad. And he's not even pulling G, so he's having fun, while you were like fatiguing yourself. So what I mean by that is Rafale is a very good platform. Long distance, short distance as well. But I think all those aircraft are to a technological point where they're pretty much worth each other. And it's down to not really the combat itself, but how you're going to get in the combat. That's going to make the big difference. And I think it's even more true given the fact that we always train the same way. We always train with defensive scenario or offensive scenario, or you come to the merge. And what is really dangerous in squadrons, that's something I try to emphasize on the videos for the active duty guys that look, just because I know it can help a little bit, is even though you're doing a combat training mission where you are supposed to be like guns or Fox 2 post-merge only, it is your duty as an active personnel to train yourself to take pre-merge shots, because that's real life is all about.
Yeah, of course.
If you're a cop, maybe not in the UK. You guys don't like weapons for cops, but but yeah, actually now you do have you have guys with MP5. Yes, so the guy maybe he's been in the British police for like 20 years. He never was given a weapon, so he's maybe more used to close combat or stuff like that. And now he has a terrorist coming at him. He has an MP5. He's basically not using his MP5 because he got trained for 20 years not to take pre-merge shots. You see where I'm going?
Yeah.
And when you're fighting, your brain just melts. It's like very small. When you're in an aircraft, lack of oxygen, stress, all that stuff, you're going to go back to what you've been trained on. And I fear the danger of doing all those training missions where you don't do it like in real life is getting training mission reflex on D-Day.
Yeah.
You see where I'm going?
Totally, yeah.
It is really important, I think, to try to emphasize that aspect of things, even to the viewers or people that do flight simulation. Even though you want to do pure something neutral, beginning, all that stuff, put yourself in the mindset that it's not what's going to be on D-Day. Otherwise, on D-Day, all the training and the training superstar you wear is going to be useless on D-Day. Mm-hmm. Not because your aircraft isn't worth it, but because you mistrained for years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But you also flew the Rafale in combat. Can you tell us about this and how did it? I mean, was it a good platform for that mission?
You have to ask the special forces on the ground, I guess, because they were my clients. All the strikes, all the missions I did was to provide closer support. I worked with Iraqis, American troops, Canadian, French, British, tons of different troops. I had the troops in contact with the U.S. Marines reconnaissance troops, stuff like that. Iraq is a very specific theater. It's a very specific airspace. The reason is we have GPS coordinates for everywhere. We have drones everywhere, and the way we're going to employ our munitions is very, very rigid. Basically, if the center does not see what's going on, we won't shoot, but they're going to see what's going on. Mm-hmm. What I mean by that is as long as you're able to put coordinates in the bomb, nowadays in Iraq, you're going to be a good platform. Why? Because most of the guys on the ground are used to using GPS-guided bombs. GPS-guided bombs are extremely reliable, and that's usually what they ask you because they have the ability to extract very accurate GPS position grids because we've been around there for a while. So usually what's going to happen is you're going to be called. They're going to request GPS-guided bombs. You're going to try to push for a laser-guided bomb for lots of reason as a French pilot, and then we just want that bomb. You're going to give them the bomb. Nowadays, we're really flying missions to help those guys on the ground, and from a tactical point of view, it is much more difficult to do a training mission, maybe French Navy against Royal Air Force, than to do a combat mission in Iraq. The challenges are going to be different. Longer flights. We have to make it back to the boat. A workload that might spike with troops in contact. Lots of traffic. So there are lots of dangers. But what you need from an aircraft nowadays is the ability to have a good time on station, the ability to have a short time between the moment the task is passed to the moment you're able to drop your bomb. And that's basically it. So I think nowadays, places like Iraq are not the places where you need the best aircraft ever. Mm-hmm. You could have a C-130 just turning for hours dropping bombs. I mean, that would do the job, to be honest. So Rafale was a great aircraft to do the job. You can carry a lot of bombs. You have Link 16. You have all that stuff. I mean, it's completely suited for Iraq. Is it underused in Iraq? Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Just like any modern aircraft. But everybody knows that.
Well, it sounds like it was a rewarding time for you. I mean, like helping the guys on the ground, that must have been very rewarding in a personal sense.
Difference. I decided to leave the service after my first career. In France, you usually stay for 17 to 25 years in the service. I decided to transition after 13 years because the airline industry was booming and I did my math and all that stuff. But I had been in combat. I would have stayed another 10 years. And the reason is, as a fighter pilot, you're being paid by the taxpayer. The aircraft you're flying is paid by the taxpayer. And from an early stage, when I was a trainee, I had instructors that made an impression on me that told me, never forget that every single flight time, every single hour, and even your pay check at the end of the month is paid by a minimum wage working guy doing night shifts in a shitty place somewhere, and he's paying his taxes, VAT, all that stuff. He's basically putting out the money to enable you to do your stuff. So there is a sense of responsibilities that those people invested money in my training to ask me to perform a specific mission. And when you've been to combat and you perform that mission several dozen times, then you feel like the loop is looped, from so to speak, and that you didn't get your training for nothing.
So you were very conscious of that when you were flying?
Absolutely, yes. So it is extremely rewarding because you have the feeling they didn't invest millions in your training for nothing because you've been able to make an impact. You have the feeling you just saved some lives on the ground, which is awesome, having like future dads, like guys that don't have kids yet. Now they're going to be able to have kids. So you're impacting generations, which is, I actually thought about it sometime in the aircraft during troops in contact. And also on the other side, I had the reward of being shipped to combat right after the Bataclan terrorist attacks, and must be one of the only time in decades in France where the entire country was like, "Hey guys, go for it, kick some ass." Even my sister is not big into military stuff. She doesn't like war, all that stuff. She's from Paris, and she sent me a text like, "Get some." Like, the country was expecting us to deliver something, and I was able to be part of the lucky few. Like British, to be able to do it. So it was very easy, very easy. There wasn't much question or thoughts in the head. Like it was as easy as you can dream of, basically, from a psychological point of view.
Yeah. But yeah, it sounds like you obviously were conscious of that, and it was obviously rewarding for yourself. But obviously, before we get onto the personal and our patron questions, we have to talk about your time on the airshow circuit. So, how did this happen, and what was it like?
The airshow circuit is awesome. Best flying I ever did. The aircraft is you take off at 13.5 tons, and the thrust of the aircraft is 15 tons. So it's really nice. I started as a wingman. They asked for volunteers to fly in the wingman position during the weekend. So we had just extra work. So no time off during the week. You still do your full duties during the week. And then on weekend, you leave, you do air shows, you come back, you work again. At some point before the Bataclan attack, I'd fly 48 days in a row, because we're flying on the weekend on air shows, and then you come back. So it's not like the Air Force where it's your job to display the aircraft. And so people don't fight as much as they could, or as people, because of family pressure, basically. So I said, oh yeah, I want to do it. I had a good relation with the leader, and it worked very well. How do you get trained? Initially, it's flight simulator. You do two flight simulator training. You can link the sims. After you do training flight, and then you can do the air show. It's pretty basic. It's an 11-minute routine. We started with Lens air show, 110,000 people, and my family on the ground, so that was awesome. And then we did a couple more air shows. The next year, I did a couple more as a wingman, and then they changed the stuff around a bit, and I was offered the role of leader, and I was like, oh, awesome. So initially they wanted to give me a wingman. I refused. I talk about it in my book, actually. Sometimes, I don't have enough training flights to bring the wingman to the desired level, so I decided to take another wingman because I hadn't enough time to train the guy. So we did some air shows in France, and then we went to Yeovilton. Yeovilton was awesome. We ended up getting the best display award. And one of the websites ranked us second best display of the year in the UK in 2017.
Well, it was my number one, that's for sure.
And what was great was for 2017, I had this special NATO Tiger Meat painting on. And as we did the rehearsal the day before the air show for the air day in Yeovilton, I went online and found all the footage that was posted by the spotters, the guys on the ground taking pictures or filming. And I ended up debriefing my team using that footage because our team, yes. I actually wrote to Spotter Magazine lately because it is true, and they help us change a couple stuff on the air show for D-Day because I really wanted to emphasize on the painting. So that's why on D-Day I push more, I go more vertical, stuff like that, just really to change it. So absolutely thanks to the guys that went there the day before and posted online all those pictures that I was able to use it to debrief.
That's amazing. That's great. So did you have a favorite maneuver in that year?
Favorite maneuver, that I like the section fan brake. That's something I added. So we came in at 300 knots, 300 feet, section fan brake, and it's the end of the flight. The aircraft are pretty light. We demonstrate a section brake. We go on downwind, and then we turn on final. And turning on final, I'm not going to do a section landing. I could, but it's not ideal due to wind, all that stuff, a lot of what ifs. So what I decided to do was, hey, we have an air show where we are two modern aircraft. What is our competition? Our competition is a Typhoon, is a Rafale single, stuff like that. When do they do their maximum takeoff climbs? They do it on takeoff usually. Usually on takeoff, they take off, they accelerate, and then climb. But due to the configuration at Yeovilton, they're going to be far away from the crowd because the crowd is really at the beginning. So I thought, I'm going to basically come in as a section, drop my wingman for him to land, and then I put my gear up, I go full burner, and I'll accelerate about 1 mile before the beginning of the runway and 1.3 miles before the crowd, meaning starting at 200 knots, I have 1.3 miles to accelerate and do my vertical climb almost on an empty fuel tank right in front of everybody, so that people do not remember the Typhoon Zoom climb done at the beginning, but mine doing exactly in front of their eyes. And that's why there's some pretty cool footage where you see the aircraft going at 9 Gs and in the cloud and disappearing in the cloud during a bar roll, during an Iron roll. So I think that was my favorite stuff. Was, hey, what is a competition? How can I outcompete them? Hey, let's do some things I can do. I'm gonna do it right there.
And as a Brit, I'll probably get in trouble for this, but I think you did beat the Typhoon in that year like that. Oh, it was honestly my favourite display of the year. And I remember watching one video, and I think the commentator was saying, "Oh, he's about to come into land," but I think you did a touch and go, and he was like, "Oh no, okay, he's going around." Loved that. Yeah, that was great.
I posted a video in French explaining all the air show, but I'm going to do it in English, I think, before end of June, because what you have to know is I didn't do it on purpose.
Oh, did you not? Okay.
Oh, no, absolutely not. Wasn't planned at all. So I'm a Navy guy. I've got 200 landing on the boats. I need like 200 meters max to land a boat, on 150 meters to land. I came in, I wanted my display. I come from aerobatics. As a teenager, I flew extra, stuff like that. So I really know in terms of display, you have to stay in front of people and stuff like that. So on D-Day, I had no fuel tanks, and we usually fly with fuel tanks. So I didn't get any training flight without the fuel tanks. And I came in after my Zoom climb, came back for the break, did a very short circuit, wanted to come in fast, but coming from the super retardeur, where you have spool up time that is pretty critical, I don't like getting, like during my last turn, an idle power. Otherwise, I almost kill myself too many times on super E. You know, I like to have some engine response. Yeah. So I did my last turn at 190 knots, and as I got back wings level after a 40-degree angle of bank turn, I had a lot of fixed energy. So I went power to idle, and it settled in the ground effect. And being of the runway, 192 knots. And I need 175 knots to put the wheels on the ground. So I just waited, and I was, damn, but it's not slowing down. The aircraft is just keeping speed. So I had two options. Option one, 175 knots, positive landing, jump on the brake. It would have stopped, but in terms of risk level, wasn't in what I briefed myself. So I thought, I'm going to touch the wheels and go back for a loop, and I'll excuse myself on the radio. So that's what I did. Went with a burner on just for the show. As I'm climbing, I'm actually speaking on the radio and I'm laughing. I'm basically speaking myself. The only way I could go and deal with my mistake was to laugh at myself on the radio. So I went back on the radio and say, I'm sorry, for safety reasons I have to go around. And so I went around, and I think that's why the commentator is laughing, because he's hearing my radios.
Yeah.
And I'm landing and coming back, so with a less short approach, I immediately went to the commanding officer of the base and excused myself. And he told me, you were within timing, safety first, absolutely no worries. But the next 2 days after, when I went back to the squadron, so I was head instructor, the first thing what I did was at the morning brief, I explained to all my students the mistake I did. And as a fully grown-up instructor, if you can do that type of mistakes, everyone can do it. So it's all about sharing the information and having everybody understand that going around, even if it's in front of 45,000 people as a French in a foreign country, it's the worst case scenario ever. Just deal with it and you'll be fine. So,
well, your tiny mistake certainly made it for the crowd, that's for sure, after. But yeah, so how many hours did you get on Rafale?
800. I did 800 Super E, 800 on Rafale as well. I got 100 carrier landing-ish as well, and for a total of 200 carrier landings.
So we're just going to move on. We've got a couple of questions from our patrons, if you're happy to answer them.
Sure.
This is from Joe Kunzler. What was FCLP or rehearsing for carrier landings in both the Super Étendard and the Rafale M like?
Just like any FCLPs, basically you're going to use the runway as a fake carrier, and you're going to discipline yourself, train yourself to be able to apply the procedure. It is not going to be like at sea, because the sea isn't here, the boat isn't moving, and the winds are going to be different. You're going to get crosswind. You'll probably won't get in the real world. You're going to get about on the Super and Rafale 10 to 20 training missions for FCLPs. And you need at least 6 passes on every single one of them. You won't be touching down initially because you're too heavy. You're going to be touching down only for those last 2 or 3. And you do them at day or at night. At day, you're in the pattern, 3 aircraft usually. At night, you do GCAs, one after the others. Sometimes you can do short GCAs at 1,000 feet. Usually it's at 1,500 feet. You want to practice yourself to apply the procedures, and you want to learn how to do the brake. You want to be able to do the downwind, and you're going to be using ground references. I just published on YouTube a couple of days ago tutorial for DCS explaining all that stuff. So I did it in French, but I'm going to do it in English as well, and I'll basically share how you could follow the same training program as we do to be able to be better at flying the ball on softwares. But the 3 themes are be able to fly your aircraft slow. That's the first thing you want to learn. So the Super Étendard was approached at 1.1 of your stalling speed. So you had to be able to fly it very slow. After that, you want to get yourself disciplined in the pattern and train your eyes to see the good distances. To do that, you're going to use ground references. You're going to study a map and use ground references on FCLPs, and then you go at the boat. And if you don't pass the FCLPs, if you're unable to gain the trust of the LSOs, landing signal officers, you're never going to make it to the boat. And it happens once every 2 or 3 years in the French Navy. Guys either get extra training or they get reassigned to somewhere else.
Brilliant. Thanks for answering that. And this one's from Jin Yang. Do Navy Rafales and Air Force Rafales ever fly BFM against each other?
They do for training missions in Saint-Dizier. In Saint-Dizier, the school we talked about where Air Force guys do their transition. Some Navy guys go there as well. We have 2 or 3 Rafale Navy. So Rafale Navy can be used for those training missions. Then purely dogfight naval squadrons against French Air Force squadrons are extremely rare. I actually never did it. The Rafale C is going to have a lighter nose due to his total weight being about 650 kilograms less. However, the Navy pilot is going to make the difference. No worries.
Of course. And the final one from our patrons is from Alexander Vatarik. Given your basic training with the US Navy, what are the main differences in the carrier operations with the French and the US?
That's a very good question. The bigger, the better. Also, the bigger, the more easy. When you have a big carrier like the US, 100,000 tons of diplomacy, you have less constraints than the smaller boats. Example, you have a small car and you have to go grocery shopping, for example, or you want to buy some stuff to redo your house. You have a small car, deal with it. Now you have a big pickup truck. It's much easier to go to go pick up the stuff. For boats, it's exactly the same thing. And the big difference is a US carrier is going to be able to have aircraft take off and recover at the same time.
Yeah.
And the French carrier, you either catapult or you recover, meaning in terms of coordination, it is insane. It is insane. Why? Because we're take off for 6 hours of combat mission in Iraq. And as we come back, we have to hit a very specific timing. Otherwise, the next mission could be impacted. So you really have to be transitioning your flight deck all the time from recover to take off, and you really have to be on your A game in terms of timing all the time. It's not like a base where you can just come back whenever you want. No, the boat has to be ready for you. And after maybe recovering 10 aircraft, 10 jets, they're all parked in the front. There's no way we can have more operations going on. Mm-hmm. So it's a real nightmare in terms of organization. And I've been a scheduling officer for 6 years, so that was core of my duty and my nightmares. All that stuff. I talked about troops in contacts at some point. I was approaching the end of my mission, the end of my slot. I had 10 minutes left, and I was called for TACs for Marines Recon with snipers. And one of my top priority, so, aviate, navigate, communicate. Okay, it's 200 miles away. We have to go there, blah, blah, blah. I need fuel. I need a tanker. And basically my third priority was calling my Hawkeye, letting know my Hawkeye, hey, I've just been called for TAC. I won't be able to make it on time. But now, imagine you're the aircraft carrier and you just hear information coming back from 1,000 miles away that your flight is not going to make it back on time. What can you do? Absolutely nothing. That's why, as a naval pilot on small boats, as you're going to do TAC, you basically have to sail a new time on the aircraft carrier, and you have no clue if you're going to be able to do it or not. But you're basically committing yourself, saying, I will be back at that time, and you will be back at that time.
It's like your children, get home at 9 o'clock.
Yeah, so I basically made a big map, like, okay, so what type of TAC, okay, shouldn't last that long, blah, blah, blah. And so instead of just telling the Hawkeye, hey, I'll be late, you have to tell the, okay, I will be late by 35 minutes. My new time on the boat will be that. And now the boat can do something efficient. They maybe move the flights around, stuff like that, but they can work. Otherwise, I'm impacting 2,000 people. And that's what's so difficult with small boats is your actions have impacts, and it's more workload for the guy basically flying above enemy territory. If you want to do it right, but that's what you're supposed to do. So,
I can imagine a few stressful days for you there, Ate.
I used to have hair,
Brilliant. Well, thanks for answering our patrons' questions, but we've just got a few to wrap up for you. So, do you have any hobbies?
Triathlon. I used to be a triathlete. Won the US Open triathlon. Took part in world championships in long distance triathlon, world championships in short distance triathlon, and world championship in precision flying when I was 18. So sports, triathlon, basically. I don't have enough time now, so it's more running and some biking. But triathlon is my second biggest hobby after aviation.
Awesome. So this could be an easy one or a difficult one for you. Favorite aircraft you have flown?
Depends on the mission. Air show combat Rafale. Trainer T-45C, because we're in the US and we would have missions sometime once it's a cross-country weekend. Your entire class, you take T-45C from Meridian, Mississippi, and you fly solo to Pensacola, Florida. Just the entire class, like 4 training, and then you have the rental car and your key for the Luton. So that's awesome. And then for formation flying, super attendant, because the flight controls are different, and super attendant flight controls are just awesome. And if you're in general aviation, because I was pilot in general aviation, the Extra 200 series, small aerobatic aircraft, they're awesome. So yeah, I didn't say one only. Depends on what you're doing.
Yeah, I hear that sometimes people just go straight away Spitfire or something like that, or Tornado. But a lot of people I've talked to recently, they're like, depends on the mission, depends what I'm flying, which is very true.
It's actually coming from this omni-role position. We are now used to switching hats. So as we switch hats, we rewire our brain the entire time. And we don't see as one fits all anymore. We're used to changing mindset like that all the time. I guess that might be one.
So is there an aircraft you would love to fly, either it's been retired or currently in service? What would your dream aircraft to fly?
F-22, I'd like to try it out. It's awesome. Otherwise, P-51D or Spitfire.
Oh, yeah, that's a beautiful aircraft, yeah. And, final question. What are you currently up to, and where can we find you online?
Sure. So right now, I'm on medical leave of Air Canada. So I'm an Air Canada employee. I got my qualification on the 737 MAX, and I got a stroke. 2 years ago.
Oh, wow.
That forced me out of the cockpit for at least a year. So I use that year to create a business in the UK called Mach 3 Management, where I adapt aviation proven methods to B2B or personal development. So right now what I do is I'm a keynote speaker. I'm on YouTube. I've been on YouTube for 45 days. Brand new channel as well.
Congratulations.
And, brand new, but we've passed 1.4 million views in 45 days. So I can't complain. It's working well. And it's a bilingual channel. Being Canadian, I try to post all my content in English first and then in French. And I wrote a book called Debrief because I'm into debriefing, and it has been best-selling in leadership on Amazon for 20 days, which is quite nice to me because might be a best-selling, but it's not the best written.
Well, it seems like everything's going great for you, Ate. But yeah, just so briefly, what's your YouTube channel about? What kind of content do you post?
If you Google Chute, you're going to find my YouTube channel, and from there you'll have all the links. But my website is combatproven.org, and we have basically we do speaking workshops with fight simulation, a lot of different stuff, consulting B2B or B2C. If you go on combatproven.org, or if you type Chute on Google, you'll find me.
And you're on Twitter and Instagram and things as well?
I think I'm on @Mach3Management. If you go on Google me and
then you'll come up. You'll be all there.
I'm on TV sometimes. If you go on CTV News as well, you might see me. So,
yeah. The world's your oyster at the moment. It's great. But Ate, well, I just want to thank you very much for giving a bit of your time and sharing your story. And it sounds like you've had a great career, and everything's sounds like your YouTube channel's taking off and your book. So I just want to say thank you very much, and good luck in the future with everything you do.
Thank you very much. I think your concept is awesome. Like,
thank you.
What I feel like that is, and I've been around shows and stuff like that, and I really like your content. So congratulations to you.
Oh, thank you very much.